What's happening, guys? Welcome back to Red Beard's Garage, and this is a single seat Yerfdog we found on Facebook that we didn't even know existed. Pretty rare go-kart. So we've been doing some upgrades. We've already upgraded the shocks, we put some new bolts in the front end, and we did some performance parts to the stock GY6. So this is a 150cc scooter style motor. I'm sure most people watching this video are familiar with it. And so far we did exhaust, we did a 24mm flat slide Bakuni, and we did a A12 cam. And it made a big difference on power. This buggy went from being horrible to decent. I wouldn't say it's great. But we asked you guys what you wanted to see, and it seemed like more people wanted us to big block swap it instead of building this GY6. GY6s are really great engines. For a 150cc engine, they will outdo a Predator all day long. Like, you can build them up to, I think you can get a little over 200 cc's out of them, but you do have to do a lot of block modification to fit that big of a piston in it. We said we was going to listen to you guys, and it seemed like more people want to see a big block. The downside to this engine is parts are kind of expensive for it, and there's not a lot of information on these in the scooter world there is, but not the go-kart world. And this doesn't have reverse. You can buy an aftermarket reverse, but it's very expensive, and I've heard a lot of people say half the time it don't even fit, and it's sold out right now, so I don't even think you can buy it. So what we're going to do today is upgrade the engine on, and we're going to keep the existing swing arm and modify it and put a 460 Wildcat big block engine from EC Carburetors. So this is the layout of parts. We have a Wildcat 460 from EC Carburetors because this is the best dollar per horsepower you can get in the big block. Now we could go down to Harbor Freight and get a 420, but we're getting more stroke and more bore out of this 460. So it's like you got an upgraded 420 right out of the box. And we know there's a ton of performance parts because all the GX390 parts work, other than the rod being a little different, and we have a forged EC rod to put in this to give us strength and longevity. So this will be the perfect power plant to power that single seat Yerfdog, because that's a very light buggy. This thing will make a ton of torque. So I'm excited to feel just stock, it's going to be a huge improvement. Now we're going to need something to charge batteries and replenish the electric start. So we got a electric start kit that's 26 amps from Vegas Karts. This is a flywheel, the coil, as well as the voltage regulator rectifier. And this will replace all the charging system that's on this engine. This one has probably about a 5 to 6 amps charging system. So this will be a big upgrade and make sure we have power for light bars and things like that. Then to get the power to the ground, we're using Vegas Karts gearbox. This is a forward, reverse, and neutral gearbox. It has a 2-to-1 gear reduction inside of it. And we make a mount for this and we sell it on RBG Karts that you can bolt this to a plate style and tension the chain. We're gonna use it in a different way. We're going to weld my mount in, and then we're going to use a manual chain tensioner because we found that is way better than trying to slide stuff. So the engine will mount solid in the buggy. We'll get our belt tension right, and then we can weld the bracket in for this. And to get power to the gearbox from the engine, we're going to be using a 780 Comet. This is a good tunable CVT. Now we're going to reach the limits of the CVT once we build this engine out with a cam and a ported big valve head and stuff. But for stock to stage 3, this CVT will do pretty good. So we'll really be testing its limits on this build. So if it flies apart, we'll know you can't do that. And then of course we're doing a live axis swap. We're just keeping it standard on the swing arm. Now we get a lot of emails and messages of people having problems on their build. So we're going to go in super fine detail on this build. It's going to be a quick build, but it's going to be a lot of segments because people has asked me. I'm taking all the questions you guys have emailed me and messaged me about, and we're basically answering them in this video. Everything from how to hook up a throttle cable, to how to wire these engines, to how to modify an existing swing arm, because a lot of times we're building from scratch, but we're going to modify the existing one because a lot of guys can copy that and it's the easier route to go. So we're super excited about this build. We do have some performance parts. We're going to do this later, but we'll go over that when we get to that. Everything is linked in the video description. They do help us if you use those links, so make sure to check out all the parts we're using in this video and the parts that we're going to use. So we got to get to the Yerfdog, tear the back end off of it, get it up and start cutting it apart, weld it back together to get a 460 big block on that chassis. We're going to take a real quick break from the video to talk about the sponsor, which is Blaster. Now you probably know Blaster from the original PB formula, which is absolutely amazing for eating through rust, corrosion, as well as any kind of debris. Now we had a pulley stuck on an engine, that CVT pulley, and we could not get that son of a gun off. Where moisture had gotten in between the crankshaft and the pulley, we put a puller on and everything, and I was afraid I was going to break the aluminum on the pulley. I sprayed that thing with PB Blaster, and I think I let it set for 10 minutes, and I came back, and you can see in this clip, I legit pulled it off by hand because PB Blaster works so good at eating through corrosion and rust. But Blaster is much more than PB Blaster. They have a ton of products now, from their power line of products as well as just their normal chemicals and lubricants. And we use multi-purpose lubricant a ton in our shop. Now this is kind of like a water displacement and an all general lubrication. You can use this with drill bits. We have a can literally sitting at our tapping machine, at our lathe. We have it sitting in our drill press as well as our tubing notcher. And we also shine up our welding tables with this. This stuff works awesome for just quickly wiping away the debris on the table and making our Sigmund welding tables shine like new. A lot of people say it looks like our tables don't ever get worked on. Well, that's because we keep them lubed up and looking nice with multi-purpose lubricant. This stuff is amazing on door hinges, on lawn mowers, on equipment. We keep every bit of Blaster all around the house. We keep it in our camper. We bring it on rides with us because we use their chain lubricant, their chain cleaner, their air filter cleaner and lubricant. Blaster has a ton of products and we've linked their entire page down below. So make sure to check it out and make sure to stock your shelves with Blaster because it helps us out, helps Blaster out, and Blaster is an American made product, and that's what's awesome about them being partnered with the channel. We hope to be working with them for a long time, so thank you, Blaster. Thank you guys for supporting the channel.
He needs some milk.
There we go. Not too shabby.
Okay, now that we have everything cut off, Lonnie cut this off, I've cleaned it smooth, and we got to figure out, so this is the front of the swing arm. Our differential is going to sit right in here, just however it has to be for the engine to line up with it. I don't know about this tube. We may end up having to cut this out. So I'm gonna mount this up on my welding table up in the air so I can clear the sprocket. Now I know you guys don't have a welding table, but you could use blocks of 4x4 wood or whatever you got. I'm gonna use some of these Sigmund clamps. We can use 2 bolts in each one. And that's gonna get us dead set on all of them. We don't have to measure anything. So the hardest thing about mounting a reverse gearbox, you have to make sure, for one, that your chain will clear everything, and then for two, that you have enough room for the engine. We don't want to move these axle bearing hangers because this is going to be the easiest, quickest way to do it. So these 3-bolt flanges for standard 1-inch axles bolt right up to a Yerfdog. So you can replace the axle, even though a 1-inch axle is technically weaker. This sprocket is simulating our, this rotor is simulating our sprocket. It's the exact same diameter. So what we decided to do is we cut this section out because the chain has to pass through here and it got in the way, but we took this 1x2 1/8 inch. This is 11 gauge tube, and we 45 degree cut it. So this will weld on like this and box in these two where we can sink the transmission all the way down low. We're putting these under here, and I 45 degree cut them so there's just not a big lip sticking down, but these will be welded in. We got 2 of them side by side, and what that'll allow us to do is take our transmission and we can drop it down as low as possible in this. We still have to trim the mount a little bit, but it'll drop this down all the way to right here. The other problem is when mounting an engine like this, for one, our engine has to be high enough to clear the sprocket, and we got to leave room for our belt to go down to the CVT pulley that's on the transmission. It doesn't matter if the transmission's in front or behind the engine, it works all the same. So this diff came with a 420 sprocket. So you can get a 420 or a 50. You can see how much bigger a 50 is. It's double the chain size. So we're gonna go with 50 because this has a 2-to-1 gearing ratio. We don't have to have such a large sprocket. So if we wanted a 6-to-1 gearing ratio, which is a very good size for like 22-inch tires, we could do a 32 sprocket and a 10 here, and that would give us a 6-to-1 ratio, where before, like if we're running a CVT jack shaft, we have to have a 60 back here and a 10 up here. But this is a 12, so what we're gonna run is a 40, I think it was 42 right here. This is the same diameter as 42, but our brake will actually go right here. We can still use our factory caliper mounts. Anyways, we're gonna upgrade to this 50 because we can clear just fine the number 50 sprocket. So you just rotate this. This is like a dirt bike. You can slide that off, then this slides off. Then we put the lip towards the differential like that. I'm actually missing a bolt. And then you rotate this, sorry, like that. We got to find us another one of these Allens we're missing. Oop. Oh, okay. It comes with a different, the kit actually comes with a new one of these. It's wider spacing. Let me go grab it. It's here. Again, we're missing one of our, I think it fell off when we've been dilly-dallying with this thing. Once we have the chain on, we can really torque that down. So I'll find another bolt for that. So we got the axle all spaced out. We may need a wider axle. I don't know. Once we upgrade the front end on this buggy, we'll know how wide we want to make, and that's why we're not making the extra bearing supports right now. But we have this 50 chain because we did swap that sprocket over, but we need to break this chain. You can see we're landing right there. We will need a half link, Lundy. You were saying, do we need a half link? We will.
I thought we might.
But anyways, we have this chain brake. You can get these come with chain on Amazon. I mean, they're super cheap, and it just basically pushes the pin out. So we're gonna get this set up right here, right on that link. So we tighten down the nut portion first, then we can run this in, and that's gonna push the pin out. Now this can be a pain because that pin is like pressed in there. We'll just keep rotating it. And there we go. So we back this back out to get the pin out of there, and then we can tighten that or loosen that. You see what's happened is we're encapsulating the pin with the nut, and then when we turn that in, it extends the pin out to push the pin in the chain. And then of course, to put this on, we have a plate and then a locking side. So the plate will snap on there, and then with your lock pin, you want the open side trailing. So this is going to be moving clockwise. We want the open side down when we put this on. So you just set it on there, And then we can use pliers to snap it all the way down. Maybe I can use my knife. There we go.
There it is.
So you can see that's a good tension, but this is going to definitely stretch. I also feel like we should put an axle bearing in here. Once we get the engine done, I think a third bearing, we need to get this done first, and we can add a third bearing support right beside this, because that's a lot of exposed axle and a lot of torque will make that flex. We're ready now to mount the engine on the swing arm. So we use some Sigmund clamps and stops for our table, and we've lifted the engine up. I know this looks super high, but it has to be this high because we're keeping the stock axle location. Because we're keeping the stock axle location, our shocks will work just like it did with the 150, because this is unsprung weight. All this weight is not on the suspension, it's on the swing arm, so basically on the tires. So again, because we kept the axle here, we're not affecting any of the geometry of the shocks. So that's awesome. It did have a little softer suspension on this go-kart on the rear, so I could go up to a little heavier shock. We've already preloaded the ones we're running all the way, but just keep that in mind. All this weight is down low. You got to think the frame, I mean, look at the go-kart. It's super high. The engine will set right in this area. So it's not going to be as high as it looks on the welding table. I know people think stuff looks super high all the time, but it's not as bad as it looks. Anyways, I cut that plate on our weld table. You can make this with an angle grinder. We just have a plasma table, and it's a lot faster to make content, of course, using it. So that's what we use. But this is super simple to make. Just measure your center to center, which 4-inch is perfect for these engines, and 8.5 from the front bolts to the rear bolts. So 4-inch center to center on width, and then 8.5. And then we added 1.5 inch of slide for the engine so we get the right tension on the belt. So basically what we're looking at is we have these stubs sticking out each side where we cut the rear hoop off of this go-kart. We basically need to come up and grab this with a piece of tube. Now I can't bend square tubing. I can get a die to bend it, but I don't have one in stock. I need to order one because that'd be super handy with stuff like this. So what we can do is we can take square tubing, just 1-inch, 11 gauge or 1/8 inch thick walled square tubing, and we can come up at an angle and flatten out for the engine plate in the rear. The issue is we get into the chain and we got to work, you know, this belt is loose obviously, but we can't bring something right here, like we can't run the 1-inch under this because it's too close to the chain. So that's the only issue with trying to modify an existing swing arm, but we'll make it work. I could have built some new hangers that drop the axle a couple inches lower, which would get us more lift out of the go-kart. But again, you're still always going to have your sprocket on the center of your axle, so you're not gaining any clearance really. You're just lifting. It's almost like a body lift on a go-kart. I've basically drawn it out on the table. It's hard to see it, but you can see my Sharpie marks. I measured the width of the two axle stubs at the swing arm stubs that are back there. So I measured from there to the outside of that one, and we have that drawn out. I wanted 4 inches of lift off of the sides of these, if that makes sense. So this is 4.5 inches from this. So that's how much it needs to raise. It's 4.5 inches. So we've drawn it all out. I hope you can see that. And this is our flat section, and then it slants down. So we need to cut this out of this square tubing. So these are 30-degree bends. So if I was to bend this tubing, it would be 30 degrees. I can't bend it. So if I cut this one at 15 degrees and this one at 15 degrees, they'll meet and make a 30-degree bend. Then I can get this section built, and then I can lay it on the table and mark my starting line and cut the tube off there, and that will set right on the back of that. So we're going to add this cross brace because it'll give us another point to run a bar straight up, and that'll give us another axle bearing location. So we'll take these pieces of square and clamp them just like this. So that makes sure that everything's lined up with each other. We got this one clamped. Now we know that's sitting every which way is square in that. Do this. Make sure it's pulled down. So now I can tack this on each side so that bar is completely parallel with this and the bottom of this frame, because the way I can set up these Sigmund blocks. These weld tables are game changers. We could do this with wood and stuff, but it'd take a lot longer. That's the truth. So now we have that in there. And again, we can add this bar here in a few minutes to cross over, and then we can add a third axle bearing in the center to make sure this 1-inch axle lasts us a lifetime, as long as we support it good enough. So now this engine plate supported, of course, back here, so it's completely supported in this corner. We put that bent tube up here. Now we need to support it from this corner, but the problem is the CVT belt goes from here, so we can't go over to this. Even with a slant, it would be too close to our CVT belt. But what we came up with is we took this tube, we did a bunch of angle cuts, and we accidentally messed up, but we didn't want to cut a new piece, so I just added a section to it. But this will lay in there just like so and weld onto this and give us a kick over that goes under the CVT pulley. I think it looks good, perfectly fine. So I'm going to tack this hog in. So now, with everything tacked in other than that crossbar, we're ready to fully weld this. So we're going to add this crossbar, this last piece, and then we'll disassemble, because this crossbar will be about right there-ish. And how we can make sure it's straight is I can clamp a piece of steel onto this to kick under, and we can clamp this down to it. you know, and then throw a level or whatever. Then we weld that on. Then we can drop everything, fully weld it. And when we put the axle back on, we can slide a third bearing and hanger and just bump it up against this and do a bead of weld across it. This was not an easy swing arm to adapt. I will say, not that I'm this great fabricator or nothing, but I would think this is a more challenging swing arm because we wanted to keep the factory location. We wanted to not lengthen the swing arm. You know, there was a lot of hurdles. If we would have built a swing arm from scratch, we could have lowered this down even further if we wanted to, but we would have had to have this a little longer, probably about 6 inches longer, and we would need the axle to be a little further back. That's the reason we chose to keep this, because we don't want to do a bunch of fabricating on this go-kart. We want to keep it simple. But again, copying this might be pretty hard, you know. But
good luck.
Good luck to you. I would say build, and we will be selling this swing arm in the future when we do a different build on this. So if someone's interested in this, they could buy it fully decked out. Yerfdog swing arm.
So update, we got this bar in and we're putting the third axle hanger in, and you can see how the tip is pointing up past the bar. That's because these openings are angled this way, so we had to make this one angle that way, or we would have never been able to drop the axle. So,
and I don't want to cut an entire new axle hanger to match all that, because that's going to do plenty. It's got a ton of surface area, and we can shape it better later, like cut this sticking corner out, you know, when we take it to powder coat. And this isn't staying on here forever. Someone will end up buying this to upgrade their Yerfdog once we're done with this series on this. Pre-tack.
and
So now I can unclamp this rod, slide the bearing out so the heat don't get to it, and we'll be good, isn't it, right? Yeah. All right, now that we have the engine completely installed, we got the CVT, everything's locked down. It's real nice. Chains installed, everything's good. So now we need to hook up it's going to be easier to go ahead and put these shifter cables on these differentials. So we have 2 shifter cables, of course, because this is a push-pull setup. We have the bracket that'll come in the packaging. You got to put the 3 shorter bolts in it. Sometimes they come with some longer ones. Make sure they don't bottom out before they get tight. If you pop let me shift it into reverse. Okay, pop the eyelet, then we can spin it around. And I'm going to put this in the center, so we can slide that one in, pivot it around. We're just going to try to match them, because this will give us if cable stretches in the future or anything. The key with these reverse is you want the belt. It's very hard to get the right belt tension. On this particular build, we have a center to center of about 12 inches. We're running the 8.5 inch driven. So 8.5 inch driven, 12 inches apart. And we're running a Vegas
42.
Karts CCB 02/42. So a 42 inch belt, 1 1/8 inch wide. It's our perfect setup. We have a good amount of flop. You don't want that too tight or you'll get creeping. If you load up this differential too much, it does not want to shift at idle. So you want your engine, number 1, idled as low as you can get it, and you want this belt tension about that. So I keep a lot of belts because we build all the time, obviously. But now we can tighten these jam nuts up against each other, and then we're golden. These cables are plenty long.
Good night.
Yeah, I thought this was a shorter cables. I think I messed up. I think they might be the long ones. But I did have Vegas Karts make 2 foot. I think they're 2 foot longer than these, or maybe 1 foot, because of certain buggies, the diff's on the back and it takes up all the cables. We'll have extra cable, so we'll just mount on the floor up some, you know, up on the hood.
He's got it running all through the chassis.
Oh, and this is the original like lift bracket, how they want you to mount this. I would not mount it with this. It's made so you can tighten a nut on this bolt and it raises this. I'm going to build something, grabs right here and comes down and threads onto this, so you can support the top of the diff. So there's no way, as much power as this engine will ever put, it should make the diff last longer, because you are in aluminum casing, so you want to contain that power as much as possible. But we'll do that later. So yeah, we've got to figure out our hubs and we'll be golden. All right, so we got the swing arm completely ready to go, other than we got to build the exhaust and do the wiring, but we're going to save that for the next episode. Isn't that right, Lonnie?
That's for true.
People want us to break down every little part, so that's what we're going to do with this build, is be super thorough and show you guys how to do every little step of the way until we have a running buggy, which will happen very soon. So stay tuned for the next one. We got all these bins and mufflers set out. We're going to do a pretty cool, unique exhaust. We're going to set the muffler right under the engine here on the swing arm, and this axle is actually a little too narrow. I should have bought a 54 and I bought a 48. So when this goes to powder coat this this swing arm, I will be upgrading it to the wider axle, because once we widen the front, this wouldn't be wide enough in the rear. So we do have to do that very soon, but it'll be fine to do the test drive and everything. So stay tuned for the next one where we build the exhaust, we show you some wiring, and then once we get this installed, we go on to widening the front end, and then we'll have this thing all buttoned up. So make sure to check out the links in the video description. If you have any questions or want to see any specific thing on this buggy, make sure to leave it in the comment section below, because we're reading them, and we appreciate it, guys, and love you, and God bless.